Yeah, today we're going to be jumping into something that is hopefully a fair bit more relaxed and at a little bit more of an enjoyable pace, and that is Lumion. Lumion's an amazing tool for representing the most realized, high quality versions of your designs. And unlike SketchUp, it's actually free if you're a student. I sent the link out last night. Now, the other thing that's really great about Lumion is the fact that it works with different modeling software. I'll just pull up what I was working on here before. Don't worry, this is just a random model I had saved somewhere, so don't panic if you don't have this. But the idea is, like, this is a SketchUp model, but Lumion has the power to import many different kinds of model types. You can work with SketchUp models, OBJ files, 3ds files, and many more. So it's very robust. It's compatible with a lot of modeling software, and all in all, it's just a really, really great tool for rendering your work in. So we'll close out of this. So we'll start from the very beginning here. We'll say that you just had a chance to pop into Lumion for the first time, double-clicked into it, and you might be looking at something like this. Now, I'm going to recommend, before you jump too far into anything, doing a hardware check. And what that means is you're just going to get an idea of how well your machine is going to be able to run this software. So if it doesn't give you this prompt, no worries, but it might give you a prompt that says it wants to do a hardware check. So if you're in this screen, what you're going to do is you're going to move over to benchmark right here. And I'm just going to go down to rerun benchmark, because realistically, this will probably be the first thing you do when you open Lumion for the first time, and your computer will just automatically do it for you. So it might give you a screen kind of like this, where it just says there's a benchmark in progress. And because, a lot of you have bought computers that have a decent amount of RAM in them and a fair amount of, graphic capacity, realistically, you should be just fine. So you can see, like, even with mine here, I'm able to run Lumion, and I'm on the lower end of minimal with a few of these points. But generally speaking, if you're falling anywhere within this kind of middle area between minimal and recommended, your machine is still going to run just fine. So again, this is where we kind of recommended at the beginning of the semester having something that has a decent amount of graphic capacity. Obviously gaming computers and that sort of things are pretty useful for this sort of thing, and this is where that is really going to come into play. So let's go back for a second and let's see what we can get started with. Now, if you're faced with this interface here, you're going to have a bunch of options here. You're going to have create new, which is really just going to let you go into a completely fresh template. If we click into here, let's have a look and see what we have. As you can see, you've got a bunch of just empty environmental templates that you will be able to import your work into. Now, what we're going to do is, just for the sake of demonstration and getting our bearings, we're going to go back one. And instead, what we're going to do is we're going to move our cursor over to examples. Now, check this out. Maybe it'll look a little bit different for you, but whatever you're currently running Lumion on, you should have something kind of like this, where it offers a bunch of different examples that you can just pop into to have a look around inside. So it doesn't really matter which one we pick. This can just be good exercise for getting your bearings, but let's go ahead and pick, yeah, this one looks good. Let's try Farnsworth. Let's see what that's all about. This will be a good way for us to get used to navigating around without having to do a bunch of work of building a bunch of stuff first. So let's see what one of these examples has for us. Awesome. So it might have taken a minute or two, but here we are. Now, the reason it might have taken a minute or so is just because that was loading tons and tons of polygons. And as you can see when you look around this, yeah, there's a lot of different stuff being rendered. So why don't we get a little bit of our bearings. As you can see in Lumion, you're gonna have buildings. You can see some movement in the trees and everything. There's gonna be people. So this right now is where all the built stuff we're working in Lumion is going to be available to be edited, changed, etc. So currently we're in something when we start called build mode. Now let's take a little bit of a look around here. This is where your 3-button mouse, by the way, is going to be really, really useful to you. What we're going to do is we're going to take our 3-button mouse And you're going to notice that if you hold your right cursor down, right click, and then drag, you're going to be able to start looking around. Again, I'm just holding my right click and dragging, and I can pan just like that. Now, if any of you, I don't know how many of you play video games, but if you do, that's great. You're going to be in luck because you'll already be familiar with this bit. To move in Lumion, you're going to use the letter arrow keys, which is W, A, S, and D. So W is move forward, S is take a step backwards, and then D is take a step to the right, and A, left. Then what you're going to see you're able to do is you're able to pan your cursor, hold it right down, and by holding your right cursor key down and using your arrows, you can essentially decide what arrow, or what direction rather, you want to walk in, while focusing your eye line on where you want to walk. But let's say we want to change our perspective a little bit, because obviously, like, getting a different view, or a bird's eye view is going to be really valuable to you. If we want to change our perspective on the site, you can tap E to essentially shift downwards, almost like you're crouching, and Q to shift upwards. Whoa, just like that. So again, essentially you can move along any axis that you want to in Lumion. So let's say we're ready to change perspective here for a second. We're gonna go flying for a minute. Hold Q down, and you're gonna find your perspective is elevated. Now let's say for a moment I want to see this tree over here. Maybe I want to go over there and see what kind I picked, or see what kind of leaves it is, or something like that. So here's what we're going to do. When you're moving around your model, I recommend taking your cursor. Can everyone see the cursor here? Okay, great. I recommend putting that kind of in the center of your screen, almost like, down this little scope here, and then right clicking so that wherever you have your cursor in the center of the screen, you're automatically oriented with where you're looking. Then, with the right cursor held down, then I can just tap W for forward to start moving towards it. I'm holding it down just like that. Now, let's say for a moment your model is really, really big and I want to get there faster. So I'm holding W down, but also holding Shift down. That'll kind of zoom me there a little bit faster. Now, Lumion is really big and powerful and capable of doing tons of unique stuff. And just to give you a taste of what we can do now that we've had a bit of a grasp of moving around, let's talk a little bit about some of the essential functions of the interface. Let's get turned around. So let's talk about our interface then. Move over to the bottom right of your screen and have a look at this. Do you guys see this little question mark down here? That is going to be a really handy little tool if you ever get lost. If you move your cursor down to the question mark on the bottom right of the screen, this is essentially going to just give you a quick blip to throw all this here up and tell you essentially what the different buttons do. So again, ever lost, move your cursor down here. This will get you reoriented. Now, everything that you see over in this corner, these four, photo, movie, save, and 360 panorama, those all center around exporting. Obviously, in this class, a really big part of what we do is taking things out of the building, working, fine-tuning interface and getting it out of the box and into presentation mode. And the export section of your Lumion interface is going to be your ticket to doing. Now, check this out. Right now, see this guy digging right here? That indicates build mode. Now, it's highlighted because, like I was saying before, we currently are in build mode. But we want to see what Lumion can actually export. So what we're going to do is we're going to move our cursor over, and instead of working build mode, we're going to click on the photo button so that we can see how to export a still image of what we're currently working in. Okay, awesome. So now we're in the photo section of Lumion. Now you're going to notice something right away. Obviously, this is like the direction I was looking in. But if I click into one of these are all pre-saved. Check this out. I'm able to look around and move exactly like I was able to in build space. And have a look at this. We look over on the right side of the page here. We have all of these different effects. Now, these are visual effects, which have been put on this still image. And this is really where Lumion gets a lot of its value, is the fact that it has this portion of its interface where you can save a perspective view or save any view you've crafted, apply all kinds of cool styles to it, and then save it so that you're not losing that view. You can go and you can fine tune it later on as much as you want. Now, these are all pre-selected effects, but we can still have a look through them and see what they do for our drawing. So you guys see the eyes here? It's just like working in Illustrator or anything like the Adobe Suite, where those eyes indicate that it is visible. So let's go ahead and see what happens if, okay, we get the little disable effect there. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we turn all these off. I'm just gonna go ahead and turn all of these off, all of these effects that some nice person at Lumion has put on here for me. I'm gonna turn them all off. Now, check this out. Just like that, it sure is a lot less dynamic, hey? It's not quite as impactful as something like this, where it's, it's moody and it's kind of striking and, it's got interesting sunlight. So the effects that you're able to put on your work in the photo section of Lumion are really going to be the thing that takes your rendering to the next level and really brings it to light. So you'll get a chance to look through some of these, as all of the different templates you get in the example projects all have different ones. If I guess the idea here is effects are going to be really, really valuable. Now, check this out. If we look down in the bottom of the screen, see all these here that I've been jumping through? These are all of the different views that have been saved. So the idea is these are all pre-saved, and you'll notice they all have different effects on them. So as you save different views in your essentially in your photo saving component of Lumion here, you're going to be able to adjust your different styles and apply different styles as you want to. And don't worry, we're going to get into applying those in just a second. But the main idea for this part is different styles and different views and are all going to be more or less applicable based on what you're trying to accomplish. So, for example, let's have a look at this one. So, this is an exterior shot of this, of this person's house, and you see that it's got some, effects relating to, color correction. You can do things like you can adjust your temperature. It's got some effects relating to, sharpening, so people can, you can adjust and the sharpness and definition of your work based on what you're trying to look at. Your shadows, all that. You can essentially trick this out and play with this as much as you want. And in a moment, we're going to get into a few that I recommend starting. But I will say, before we get into that, the big thing with effects is that your greatest asset at this stage will be having some time to play. There's going to be lots of effects that we're going to be able to jump into, and experimentation is a really key component to finding a thing that works for whatever view you're trying to create in Lumion. So let's say, great, we've talked a little bit about effects, we've talked about saving different views and everything. Let's actually get into creating a new view of our own. So just to recap, we're over in the photo portion of the Lumion interface. We've got essentially this this deck of all of the saved views that we have so far, but we want to create a new one. So what we're going to do is we're going to move over, and you see these empty spaces over here that are free of any saved work. We're going to go ahead and double click into one of those. We'll double click. Whoa, Look at that. Everything just went away. Now, why is that? That's because that doesn't have any effects or styles on it right now. No problem. We're going to figure out how to add those ourselves. So first, what we're going to do is, now that we have a completely fresh view, let's start by adjusting our perspective a little bit. Well, so just like when I was in building mode, I'm going to take my cursor. I'm going to move it to somewhere in the middle. I'm going to hold down or right click. And let's say I want to shift over a tiny bit to a spot that shows a little bit more of a dynamic kind of view of this neat house somebody's built. So again, I'm just using the W, A, S, and D keys, and I'm just holding down my right cursor to essentially navigate to a spot that I'm comfortable with. Okay, let's say for right now, let's say we're happy with this. Okay, great. So let's say we like the perspective. Now it's time for us to start adding some different effects. There's a couple of different ways you can do this, but for now, we're going to start with the basic one. If you look over to plus effects, you're going to see the little add effects blip. So let's click into that. Oh, okay, great. So here you're able to select all kinds of different categories of effects that you can apply to your view in Lumion. So I'm going to just take a moment to flip through a whole bunch of these here. In featured, you get photo effects for achieving really striking and realistic looking things, whether it's, fine-tuning your shadows or adjusting it so that it's got a 2-point perspective on it, or adjusting depth of field, or adding in realistic skies. If you look in the concept section, this is where you can do stuff that's like kind of cool with your drawing. Like you can make it look really pastel-y or watercolor, or even make it so that all your work is shown in outlines. If you're in the architectural section, that's where doing things like sun studies to geolocate your work and make it really realistic to the part of Calgary that you're working in can be really valuable. And you can do stuff like adjust it so that it's in styrofoam. You never know. You might be in a situation with maybe a client one day where they just want to see all the buildings in white, so you have that option. The options related to lighting. Really, the idea here is you can create really unique lighting scenarios where, if you want something to be really imposing and powerful and impactful, you can do things like include, God rays, and that can just, produce really powerful and, ray-like sunlight for you. So essentially you get the idea. You're going to fly through all of these, and you're going to see that, you can put a fisheye on it if you want to. You can adjust depth of field, add lens flares. You can really add in as many of these different photo effects and visual effects as you want to. Again, there's really lots to play with. But just for now, I'm going to recommend we go down to camera, and we're going to start with, why don't we start with depth of field? Obviously, perspective is very, very important. Ordering your work is very important. So we'll go ahead and we'll have a start with this one. So we've got depth of field. Now here's the idea. Once you pick a style or an effect, what you do is you click on it. That'll automatically bring it into this perspective that we're working on. And then you can essentially fine tune that effect with respect to your perspective or your drawing. And you can start, essentially adjusting it so that it is, reflects what you want it to reflect. So for depth of fields, let's go ahead and start playing around. Okay, so it says amount. So if I left click, I'm going to drag. And again, I'm just playing with it, just doing a little experimenting, and I see, okay, that's very blurry. So that's maybe a little bit too much. Let's say I just want this tree in the background to be kind of blurry because I want the focus to really be on my building here. So, okay, let's say, yeah, I'm happy with that level of blurriness. Let's say, though, I don't want the front of the building to be blurry. So that's where I can do things like start playing with my focus distance. Just by turning that up a little bit, I can also see that I'm able to adjust like what's the degree to which my camera is focused on something. So if I want to make sure, though, that obviously my building here is in nice clear view, I can go ahead and I can grab sharp area size and I can start playing around with this. So you can see, do you see how as I move this the scale over here, it just starts crisping up the parts of the building? You see, just by doing a little bit of playing, I can see, oh, okay, good. So now, before everything was out of focus, now by adjusting my sharp area size, all my work is in focus, but this tree in the background is a little bit out of focus, which when you think about the hierarchy of what you want to show, is just fine. Stuff in the background that's maybe less important is a little out of focus, whereas the focus of the work, or the subject of your work rather, is in focus. So that should give you a sense. And like I say, you can see I was just playing with it for a moment there, just to sort of see what worked for me. That's really the idea behind adjusting your effects. Go back to back. So that's all good. Great. Why don't we try another one? We're going to go down to effects once again. And this time, we're going to pick another one that I think is really, really valuable. And I think it'll be something that really makes your work, quite impactful. It's on featured. You're going to move down to real skies. Or, I think you can also find it. Yeah, you can find it in sky weather here too, somewhere, I think. Or maybe not. You can just find it in features. So we'll pick real skies. And then we'll see what we can do with that. Okay, so just like that, you can see all of your work, all of the sky in the background, rather, just got a little bit more believable looking. Your lighting kind of got a bit softer. So here's what we're going to do. You've got real skies picked. What we're going to do is you're going to go down to select real sky. And most of the navigation on these different effects is fairly intuitive. So you're going to find that just by clicking around a little bit, you're definitely going to find some different options and variables you can play with. So great, I'm in real skies. Let's try something relating to morning. Maybe we want to try something like that. Once we're here, you're going to see you have a whole bunch of different options for morning skies that you can bring in. And again, it's going to really depend on what you want to show. Maybe you do want to show this building in an evening, or on a really clear day, or at nighttime. With real skies, you're going to be able to do that in a way that still looks believable and realistic. But for now, let's go ahead and stick with morning. So it doesn't really matter. Again, experimentation is good, but let's try this one. We're going to try morning 3. Okay, great. So we've got a real sky applied. Now it's time for us to hop over to our sliders and see if we can maybe adjust this so that the lighting is a little better and more of the building is illuminated. So again, this is where playing with the slider really comes in. We're just going to left click and drag, and whoa, look at that. Just like that, you can see a lot more of our work is in essentially is illuminated. Now I know there's tons of trees right now, but you get the idea. You're essentially able to trick out where the sun is located based on where your heading is. You're also able to do things like adjust the brightness of your entire image, because if it's a little dark, okay, fair enough, but by grabbing the slider and dragging it up, maybe you find your work is showed with just that extra little bit of clarity. To adjust the overall brightness of the sun, we can go ahead and we can go down to this slider here and click and drag just to make the sky pop a little more. But just to give you an idea, let's say, okay, I don't want to show this in the morning. All I did there was I just clicked into real sky, and maybe I want to show this during a nice, bright, sunny day. I'll pick something like clear sky. And again, playing is what it is all about at this stage. So great, okay, suddenly that's way better lit. I can still adjust my heading. I can really do, I can really do whatever I want with it. Great. So all this is good, but what Lumion is really valuable for is making it really easy for us to take it to the next level and really make that realism kind of. So check this out. I know I've got a couple of effects that I've shown you how to plunk into your view you've created, but thanks to the nice people at Lumion, we can do a lot of this way quicker. We can have a lot of these effects in and dialed in a lot faster. Here's how we do that. Instead of picking on add effects, we're going to go up to custom style. We're going to pick left click and have a look at this. These are all pre-built sort of packages of effects. So as soon as we pick one of these, we pick one of these styles, what that's essentially going to do is that's going to throw in all of the effects and styles that are required to sort of achieve, for example, a really realistic render, or a render from like to make it look like a color sketch or a watercolor or a nighttime. So for now, again, it'll really depend on what you're trying to show, but let's go ahead and try realistic. Let's see where that takes us. Now, check this out. Way more impactful already. The colors are popping. The there's good contrast and everything in the trees. That's all good. But check this out. All of the ones that we already inserted, depth of field and real skies, that didn't blow them away. They're still in there. We just added in a whole batch of new effects from the realistic style that we picked here, right up here at the top, to sort of achieve this. So just like that, Lumion has now pumped this new view we've created full of a bunch of really cool new effects and styles to really help us take it to the next level. So that's that. Great. Now oops. Just give me 1 second here. By the way, how's everybody doing with this so far? Am I going way too fast, or is this okay right now? Anybody totally lost at this stage? Okay, sounds like people are okay. Okay, wicked. Okay, so awesome. We've got a few effects going on here now, but what have we not done, and what is the really, really important step at this stage? We haven't saved our work yet. So what we're going to do is, let's say, yeah, I'm feeling it. I like this view. This is good. We're going to go down to this slot that we currently clicked into to get all this work started. And you see this little camera guy here? You're going to see, when you move your cursor over here, this blip above the camera that says store camera. So what that's going to do is, by left clicking, and I already heard the noise come from somewhere over here, so I know someone's ahead of me on this, and good job. We're going to go ahead and left click on store camera, and usually gives you a cool camera click shutter noise. It didn't with mine. I don't know why. But the idea is, now that's saved somewhere. We've actually saved that view right there. So again, I'll just hit it twice just for good. There we go. That's the sound it's supposed to make. Perfect. So check this out now. Now that that view has been saved, if I click away from it, I look at another view or something like that. I look around the exterior view. I maybe futz around with a different view, but then I click back to this. Look at that. It's all saved. All my effects and presets are all saved. It's all living somewhere where I don't have to worry about losing all that hard work I put into like fine-tuning that view. So that's all great. And just for good measure, and because I know we're always talking to you about making sure you are saving your views and your perspectives and that kind of stuff with logical names, let's go ahead and give this a reasonable name too. If I move my cursor down to the bottom of the view tile where we're seeing the thumbnail, and we pick left click, you're going to notice that you have the option to adjust your title. So let's say I want to call this something. So we'll pick something easy. We'll say perspective view. Great. You can click anywhere outside of it. And just for doubly good measure, and because I always save everything about 1,000,000 times, we're going to go ahead and I just like to hit that, store that in camera. It's probably unnecessary, but you can never hit that button enough times. I would hate to ever see anyone lose their amazing work. So this is all good. We've saved the view, we've named it, we've put some effects in. We'll say we're happy with that. But there's another really important step. We don't want to lose anything we've done so far today. So what are we going to do? We're going to move our cursor over to the corner here. Right now we're working in photo. We're going to slide over and down one, and you're going to move down to save and load projects. So we'll tap left click to get to save. Now I'm currently working an example, but typically you're going to have an option to save it as, and that'll just take you to wherever you want to save it. So yeah, great. I should save this somewhere. We'll just say perspective One. It doesn't matter. I know we gave you a bunch of saving naming conventions that I've done a terrible job of conforming to, so do as I say, not as I do. Sorry, guys. But you get the idea. So once I've saved my work with the little floppy disk down there, I'm going to move back my cursor back over here. Now, we'll go back to photo for a second just to make sure, yep, everything is saved and looks good the way we want it to. So that's awesome. Now, all of this stuff we've been doing up to this point has been great, but really the final step is hitting this button right here, render photos. Assuming you are happy with what you see, hitting the render button will essentially take everything you've got right here, and it's going to produce a nice render of it. So let's check it out right now. With the view that I want to render selected and active, just double click it to make that happen. I'm going to move over to the giant big green render button. I will tap left click, and it's going to give us some options here. So it's going to give us different options as to how big and how high the the DPI and the quality is going to be. So me personally right now, I'm going to suggest, I mean, if it's something quick and you just want to spit out a quick thumbnail, you can pick email or desktop. Obviously, if you're printing something on a poster down the road, or you're presenting your work and it's going to be, on a big board or something, the poster option, see when you look at that DPI, is really, really great. But for now, let's just see what happens if we pick desktop. Let's see where that takes us. Left click. We're gonna put this in, okay, yeah, sure. So we'll just say, perspective rendering 1. Great. We're gonna move down to save, tap left click. It might take a moment or here, because, it's going to try to process a whole bunch of stuff, but check this out. It'll take you to a screen kind of like this. It's going to chew through all the effects that we've put on it, and it's going to try to essentially turn everything that we've just viewed into a nice finished actual product that could then find its way to InDesign or wherever you want to show it. Might take a minute or two here, no worries, because in a moment we're going to pop this open. And I think I've got the file saved here. Great. So it appeared in my working file. Let's see what we got. We're going to double click. Right on. Okay, so not bad. We can see there's a good amount of realism to that. The lighting is good. It showcases the differences in perspective and everything. So that just goes to show you how quick you can tune up and produce a really, really cool rendering with effects in Lumion. So that's all well and good, but here we'll go to OK here to get out of that. That's all good, but let's get to know some of the actual tools that we can use to actually get our model to this stage that we can adjust in Photoshop, or in the photo section rather. So what we're going to do is, we've been working photo this whole time. We're going to move our cursor over here, and we're going to go through our build tool. So you see this guy digging right here? That indicates build mode. So we're going to click on him to make that active. And just like that, we're actually back in build mode. Now in build mode here, I'm going to just move this over a little bit, adjust our location a little. Once you're in build mode, you're going to have the options to adjust all kinds of stuff in this world that you've created. So you're going to notice you have content you can bring in, materials in your model you can adjust, landscape that you can revise as you want to, and weather, which you can manipulate as you need to. So we're going to start by taking a look at the weather. So in build mode, weather affects sun height, clouds, brightness, that kind of stuff. So you're going to notice that you're going to be able to do things like adjust your skies and your clouds, your sun direction, the time of day, and things like brightness and wind speed. So let's try it right now. Let's start over on the left. We can start by adjusting the different clouds and skies that we have in our map. Let's left click and pick under select clouds. And as you can see, you've got lots of different options here. You can have a clearer day, or a cloudier day. Let's try something kind of different here. Okay, great. Now let's say we want to actually alternatively, you can also turn on real skies if you want to. And you're going to say that you're able to actually adjust that as well. So much like what we were discussing before, you're going to be able to have some fun and play with that as well. Now, great. Now let's say we want to adjust our sun direction a little bit, depending on what time of day that we're working in. Just by clicking and dragging the sun icon right here, we can essentially adjust where the sun is located based on based on where our cursor is here. So that's all really good. You can adjust that as you need to, and there might be different times where you want to showcase different stuff. So that's going to be useful for you. But let's say you don't want a daytime shot. You want something that kind of shows twilight or nighttime. This is where, okay. So sun height will be fixed if we're set in real skies. So all you're going to do is you're just going to turn real skies off, and you're going to notice then you can adjust your sun height as you need to. So I'll left click, and I'm going to drag that down, and just like that, I can now get a bit of a sense for what it would be like if it were nighttime. Now I realize that we'll probably adjust that a little bit more as we need to, but you get the idea. You're essentially able to tune your lighting and time of day as you want. If I want to do things like adjust sun brightness, I can move over to this slider here, left click, and drag. And whoa, if I drag that all the way up, that is like an obliteratingly bright and way too sunny day, so that's a little bit too much. But we can just drag that cursor right back to have a little bit more of a reasonable amount of sunlight. If I want to do things like adjust the level of cloudiness, I can do that as well. Once again, I just click on the slider, and I can drag to the left where there's no clouds, or drag all the way over to the right, left click and drag all the way over to the right, where there's tons of clouds and it's a super cloudy and overcast day. Again, it really just depends on what you want, but it's super easy to adjust. Maybe I want wind speed. Maybe, I know in assignment 2, there was talk of creating, making space areas that were kind of protected from a really windy spot. So if you want to show really windy trees in the background, that's totally possible too. By left clicking on wind speed, left clicking, holding and dragging, you're going to notice it's actually possible to show your work that's actually kind of blowing in a breeze. So if I want to really turn it up, you're going to notice as the trees start to bend, you kind of have the power to show something that's on a windier day. If I want to adjust wind direction, once again, left click and drag, and you're going to notice you have the power to adjust that as well. So really, you can fine tune your environment and your weather as much as you want. Great. Okay, so that should give you a bit of a taste for the weather tip. Now, we're going to move over one. You see the little mountain here icon? That's the landscape tab. So I'm going to show you what that's all about. Pick landscape. And we're going to rotate around here so that we can actually see a little bit of our landscape. Whoa. Okay, great. So landscape is lots of fun. You can raise and lower terrain. You can smooth it out. You can sort of adjust your landscape as you like. So let's start with height. So we're going to left click and pick the mountain range with the little up and down arrows. Left click. And you're going to notice, just like that, a bunch of these different options and icons come up. We've got raise. That just means that whatever's inside of this yellow circle here is going to be elevated. You can lower it and create a bit of a pit if you want to. Flatten, if you want to make something jagged and jittery, you can. Or if you want to smooth stuff out, you can as well. As you can see, this circular, cursor is very, very big. So if I want to do things like adjust the size of that cursor, I'm adjusting the height width, I can do that as well. I can left click and drag to make it really, really big. Whoa, that's really big. Or I can left click and drag it all the way to the left to make that cursor a little smaller. Did you guys see how the cursor changed in size there? Bigger and smaller? Okay, good. Great. Now, let's go ahead and, before I explain this one, let me go ahead and show you a little bit about what this does. So right now I've got raise selected, we're going to go ahead and try something. I'm going to left click and hold. Okay, so just like that, just by clicking a little bit, you're going to see that that started raising it up. Now watch what happens if I adjust my brush speed. I'm going to drag it down a little bit first. Here, first I'm going to undo this. Well, I just drag my brush speed down a little bit so that it's really, really low. If I left click and hold, look, just like that, that starts raising it a lot more slowly. But watch what happens if I turn my brush speed all the way up. Whoa, geez, okay, that's way too much. You get the idea though. Essentially, you're able to tune both the size of the brush and the speed at which the brush applies that command. And that's going to be applicable to a few elements of your landscape too. Now, let's say I want to just undo everything I just did. What I'm going to do is if you move over to the right here, you're going to notice an undo paint landscape. So I'm just going to left click, tap. Yep. What you can do is you can essentially adjust your brush size. So like, are you saying that you'd want to create something that's sort of mountainous and a little smaller? Okay, sure. So what you could do in that situation is you can make your brush nice and small. You can essentially tune this down so that it isn't too jittery and quick. And what you can do is you can essentially start clicking, and you can sort of adjust your bank size, I guess, as you want to. That way, you can click along it, and there's going to be an element of like trying and checking a little bit. But let's say, yeah, if I want to craft a berm of some sort, I can certainly do that. I can kind of move my cursor along with the cursor being, nice and small. And let's say, okay, that's super jagged. That's not really quite what I want. That's where I could then move my cursor over from raise over to flatten, or smooth rather. And I can pick that. And what that'll essentially do is I'm just going to go ahead and turn my brush speed down a little bit. That'll essentially flatten my work out a little bit, just so that it creates a little bit more of a realistic looking berm and it's not quite so jagged. Does that sort of make sense? Okay, great. So yeah, there'll be some playing with brush size that'll be necessary, but you get the idea. It's certainly possible to create, a hill or some sort of a berm or bank or whatever that is to a specific size. But it will take some playing, and that playing will happen both with brush size and I find brush speed. And again, these different tools will serve different things for you, but I think raise and smooth will be your best bets. Now, that's actually a really good question too, because that lets me to also transition to another really important element of working with landscape, and that is the paintbrush. So here's what we're going to do with that. I've got height, and then I'm just going to move my cursor down, and you see the little paintbrush icon there? We're going to pick him. So what you do with the paintbrush is it works very, very similar to applying your different landscapes, or sorry, your different heights. So what that means is, just like before, you're able to adjust your brush size and your brush speed. But let's say for a moment that, yeah, like if you want to create a bank or something that's kind of like pebbly or something like that, what you can do is you can pick a landscape here. And essentially what you're going to do is once you pick it, you're going to be able to just paint it on. So let's say I've clicked this one. Yep, I want to paint that so that it is sort of bermy and kind of looks like a bit of a shoreline or something like that. Then what I can do is once it's selected, I'm going to move over to the area that I want to paint, and I'm going to hold left click. Now, you might be thinking that's not doing anything. Well, here's why. If I move my cursor down here, I can adjust the brush speed just like before. So if I drag it up just like this, so that that paint, I guess you could say, or that material applies a little faster, then I can click and hold. And look, just like that, I'm able to paint that up. So yeah, if I do want to create a bank of some sort, I can absolutely do it this way. If I want to apply a bigger patch of bank or something, I can just drag upwards, And just like that, I can apply a whole bunch of it to a mass. And if I want to adjust it, make it nice and small, and do kind of something a little more detailed, I can do that too. So all this is good, but let's say this climate that I'm applying my different materials and that sort of stuff in is not quite what I'm looking for. Well, once again, Lumion kind of wants to help us pick something that's perfect for what we want to achieve. So if you look over here, specifically in the paint section of the landscape portion, you're going to move over and you're going to see the option choose landscape, where you get this little thumbnail of this nice glade. If I left click, you're going to notice I have a whole bunch of different options as to different landscapes and presets and that kind of thing that I have for options. So just for fun, why don't we see what, okay, let's see what Egypt has to show for us. So we'll pick Egypt and check this out. Whoa. So you're going to notice that just changed everything. It just changed the different materials we have options to apply. It just changed, all the groundwork and everything like that. That just goes to show picking different landscapes obviously can let you completely change, I guess, the atmosphere and that kind of thing for what you want to show. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick this and we're going to go back to what did we have it on before? We'll go back to grass. We want to keep it something that's sort of reasonable. So all that is good. But once we've, say, landed on something that we're, go ahead and change this back. Once we've gone ahead and landed on something that we're pretty happy with as far as like environment and terrain, there's something else I want to show you guys. And that is just down to the right here, 2 over from paint. That is the landscape grass. We're going to go ahead and pick grass. And now, check this out. Grass is one of those things that obviously, especially those of you landscape architecture students in particular, softscaping is such a huge element of making a space, cool and friendly and like it's meant for people to hang out at. So, I mean, this is where being able to do things like adjust your grass is going to be super valuable for us. So, let me show you what we do. Once we are in the landscape grass portion of of the landscape, we're going to be able to move our cursor over and look at this. We can adjust grass size. We can adjust grass height by left clicking and dragging on the slider. And we can adjust grass wildness. So we can make that grass really, really wild if we want to. We want this to be a totally untouched, glade kind of thing. We can. And again, that's just by left clicking and dragging and adjusting your wildness as you want to. Now, as wonderful as it is to have tons and tons of grass all over the place while you're working on your model, I know it can be a little bit of a strain on your machine. So, I mean, as you can probably hear right now, my machine is absolutely humming up a storm right now. It can be a lot to process, and for those of you who are a little like unsure about what your computer can do, there is an option to lighten the load of what you have to render, and that all starts with grass. So what I mean by that is this. If I take my cursor and I move up to the top of my screen here, you're going to notice something. I don't know if you can make that out in red there, but that's 59.4 million 3D points. So this is a ton of 3D points it's trying to create, and a lot of that is coming from this grass that we're showing. So you know what we're going to do about this, just to lighten the load that's on our model right now? We're going to move our cursor down to the bottom here, and you're going to notice you have the option to turn landscape grass on and off. I know that just made our model, pop a little less, but check this out. Then when I move my cursor up to the top here to check out the status of the machine, that just dropped it down to 47.4 million 3D points. So still a lot, but that just lightened the load that the machine has to lift for right now. So if you're finding your machine is chugging, I do personally recommend adjusting, going down to the grass panel of the landscape, essentially tab, and turning your landscape grass off. And again, if I want all that stuff back, don't panic, didn't go anywhere. All I do is I just tap left click, and there it all is again. So never fear, the grass still lives somewhere, it just lightens the load. Yes? Yeah, sure. So, I think all I did here was I really just took this, like I think what you can essentially do is you can really just take any other material, and you're gonna notice that I can really just start drawing kind of as I want to. Like, do you mean like, do I just want grass on one part? Okay, sure. So, yeah, not a problem. All I can do is I can just zoom out a little bit. Here, we'll take a step back here just for a moment. And okay, yeah, good question. I could take my brush here. I could pick a different material. Um, yeah, let's say I want another landscape texture or something like that. And what I could do is I could take my brush, I could make it nice and big. And let's say I just want to keep like this strip of green grass right here. I would pick a different material that's different from my green grass. Yeah, make my brush big, and then I make my brush speed nice and fast so that when I zoom out, then I can just mass apply this other, no, I can just mass apply this other material and essentially just maintain that little bit that I want to keep as grass. Now, mind you, this is all like landscape stuff that we're working in right now. But yeah, I can certainly like paint around this and I can make this a different bit of material. And if I want to, just keep that little patch of grass I had as just grass. Does that help? Okay, wicked, cool. Um, and once again, yeah, that's a good question, but this is all like natural landscape stuff, so yeah, that's where essentially being able to do things like paving and all this stuff, that's not landscape, but we'll get into that in just a minute. But yes, good question. Okay, on that note, that lets me that brings up another really good thing here, and that is here, we'll go ahead and undo all that. That is one more over on this sort of tab of different stuff in the build mode, and that is materials. So we're going to tap left click, and you're going to notice it's going to start by giving us a prompt. So this is where you are going to adjust all of your materials in your project. And as you're going to notice something, we're going to zoom in a little bit here on the actual model stuff that we have. The model stuff that, some other nice person has imported in, but we'll get a chance to import our own work into in just a little bit. So I've got material active. Now here's what I do next. I'm going to move my cursor, and you're going to notice something. As I move my cursor around, you're going to see that different materials are illuminated. And essentially what that means is that once that material is illuminated, that means it's sort of ripe for being adjusted in the material editor if we need to. So yeah, just for fun, let's say we want to take this deck here and we want to adjust that material. Now, there already exists a material on that, which is good because that means that now there's a material for us to change. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to, with that material illuminated, we're going to left click. And you're going to notice all of these different options just came. You see there's options on essentially how we can edit the current material, or we can move up here and you see this 9 squares next to each other. That's the material library. So we're going to go ahead and do a left click and look at all this. Now we have tons of different options as to what we can make that deck into. We can, and again, this will involve a little bit of searching, some kind of picking around to see what we want to achieve, but you're going to notice you have tons of options. If you go to indoor, you have all kinds of stuff relating to fabric and glass, leather, wood. If you go to various, you can get kind of a mishmash of a bunch of different stuff, soil, water, assorted, woodland. If you go to outdoor, there's tons of stuff relating to ceramics and brickwork and metal and stucco and painted plaster and that kind of stuff. So for right now, let's see what indoor has for us. And again, I know I probably sound like a bit of a broken record, but this will take some searching and some playing and some having fun. So play with the materials for a little bit, see what really jives with you. And that can be a really good way to essentially see what really works well. So let's say I've picked indoor because I saw that thumbnail in wood that I really like. We'll go ahead and we'll pick that one. And just like that, it brings us to a folder of a whole bunch of different wood options. if I wanted to maybe search around and see what maybe stone had to offer, I would click into that, and that takes me to a whole bunch of different stone options. You know, soil takes me to a lot of different soil options. You get the idea. These tiles here at the top are really just like the categories of different material options that let us, I guess, fast track us to what we might want. So yeah, let's say we're happy with wood right now. We'll pick into wood, and you're going to notice there's lots and lots of different things that we can pick here. Now, I will say this. You're going to notice we're able to go through, you know, different pages of materials. Now, some of them had that polygon icon on them, and some of them do not. Here's the deal with Lumion. It's sort of like it's kind of like SketchUp in the way that, you know how SketchUp has like the 3D warehouse where there's like tons of different options for like materials and models and that kind of stuff, and different people can contribute different models, and it's kind of like a big hub. This is the same thing where different people have made different materials, and as a result, there's some materials that are, you know, de facto better than others. For example, materials made by Polygon are really, really robust. You can really trick them out and have some fun, and I'll show you what I mean right now. Let's say, yeah, I want to pick polywood flooring. Great. If I pick that one, okay, actually, that's crazy looking. Let's pick something else. That's even worse. Sorry, guys. Now, whatever, we'll stick with this one. Okay, so this one's by Polygon. Now, we've picked this one. Now what we're gonna do is, let's say, yeah, I like the slats and everything. That's cool, but I am not really quite happy with the color yet. It doesn't really look realistic. Here's what we're gonna do about that. I've picked the material. Now I'm gonna move up to Edit Material up at the top left here, and I'm gonna click into that. Now, I know typically in this class we're pretty big enthusiasts for showing as many tools as you can possibly show. So I'm going to recommend moving down to Show More and picking left click. And you're going to notice a whole swack of other options appeared just now there. So great. Here's what we're going to do now. You're going to notice that I'm able to trick out like my color and say, you know, maybe I want to make this so that this is a little bit lighter. Okay, that's way too light, but that's fine. I'm able to adjust this at this stage. Maybe I want to adjust my colorization and give it a little bit more of like a burnt umbery kind of look. Well, thanks to the robustness of this material that Polygon's created, we're able to adjust that. So we'll say, yeah, we like the colorization. Maybe we want to change something like the relief. Here's what we can do. We'll move our cursor down to relief, and you're going to notice that as by dragging, I mean, the effects are slight, but you get the idea. It really just, it produces that little bit of differentiation in color. I can do things like adjust reflectivity. I can do things like really bring up the gloss. And a lot of this will show a little bit more in the rendering. But okay, let's say, yep, I like all that, but I want to make this look real. Like really make it look like a believable outdoor deck. So here's what I do. I can move my cursor down to here. And again, this is where hitting show more is going to really help when you're playing with materials, because you're going to notice a wealth of other different options, essentially, on what you can do. I'm going to recommend, me personally, moving my cursor all the way over to weathering. And that's the little clock with the face right here. You're going to tap weathering. And you're going to notice this is where the depth of this material that Polygon creates, and that's why I love Polygon materials and Lumion particularly, is really, really worthwhile, because you're going to be able to do things like adjust your different weathering materials. So for example, if I want to move over to like make this wood look kind of weathered and kind of rough, here's what I do. I'm in the weathering tab. I pick the wood, optional weathering, and let's see what happens if I start dragging the edges cursor. So I'm going to drag this over like this. And I'm going to drag up the weathering a little bit too. You're going to notice I mean, it's very like it can be a little more subtle at times, but the idea is it does make it look a little bit rougher. I can do things like add foliage. Whoa, okay, that's a little bit too much. But the idea is you can do things like on it maybe if you're in a place where there's, you know, lots of leaves blowing around, that kind of thing, you're able to adjust that too. We'll definitely turn that off though. But you get the idea. Weathering gives you lots of different options for essentially how you can kind of adjust your your material to look a little bit more spent, a little degraded, a little tired outside. And again, lots of room to play. Obviously, we don't want the deck to look moldy, but we can, by playing with the shifter a little bit, look at that. We already see there's, I guess, some articulation in the quality of the wood, and it just makes it look that extra little bit more believable. So that's materials. But before we jump to anything else, I do want to show you why I love polygon in particular. Again, let's say I want to adjust this because I decide I hate this tile. I'm going to move up to material library, left click. I'm going to move down to something else. Let's say I'll move to something that doesn't have, isn't a polygon model. It's all still fine and everything, and you can adjust this as you want to, but you're going to find if I pick this one and I go to edit material, it's just not quite as dynamic, but it's also going to be up to your personal preference. You can still adjust things like weathering. I just happen to really like the polygon material, so more of a personal recommendation. So this is all great. Now, Entourage is obviously a really big part of your guys' work because it does things like situate your work and show scale, all that good stuff. So this is where we're going to really start having some fun with Lumion. We're going to move our cursor over one more to content library. We're going to tap the little house for content library. And this is where you're going to have all kinds of options to bring in nature stuff. You can bring in things like trees. You can bring in things like people, transport, really whatever you want. And we're going to have the option to jump around and play around with that.